My partner of 12 years was setting up a parallel agency to take our best clients. I found out because one of them called me to tell me. What I found was an exit built with precision over months. There are people with whom you build something that is more than a business. That is not only the sum of clients and projects and years of billing. That is a way of seeing work, a shared language about what it means to do well what we do, a history of decisions made together that nobody else can completely understand because nobody else was there when they were made. Ricardo and I had built that over 12 years. An agency that started in his apartment with 2 clients and a computer, and that 12 years later had 30 employees and a client portfolio that was the result of years of work both of us had put in. And Ricardo had spent months building the exit, without telling me anything, with the 3 clients that represented 42% of our billing. My name is Daniela. I am 48 years old. I am creative director and co-founder of Communications Meridiano, a mid-sized strategic communications and public relations agency. Ricardo is 51 years old. He is the accounts director and the other co-founder. We have been partners for 12 years. The dynamic between us was that of 2 people who complement each other. I brought the creative vision. He brought client relationship management. Both of us brought the work. The client who called me was named Don Fernando. He was 63 years old. He was the communications director of a family industrial group that had been our client for 10 years. He was the kind of client I would have described as a relationship client. He did not only buy services. He trusted people. And when Ricardo had proposed to him what he had proposed on Fernando, had decided the right thing was to call me. The call arrived on a Thursday morning. Don Fernando told me he had something to tell me, that he hoped I would not take it badly, that he had spent a week thinking about whether he should call me or not, that he had decided yes. He told me the previous week Ricardo had invited him to lunch, that at that lunch Ricardo had told him he was considering leaving Communications Meridiano to set up his own agency, that he had told him he wanted to take his account and the management of all his projects to that new agency, that he had offered favorable conditions for the switch, that he had said he could give him more personalized attention than he could give him at an agency the size of ours. Don Fernando told me he had declined, that we had a 10-year relationship, that he was not going to leave with someone he knew through that relationship without telling me. That was why he was calling. I thanked him, with the specific sincerity of someone who has just received information that changes the day and possibly much more. I told him I would call him the next few days. I hung up. I did not call Ricardo immediately. What I did was what I had learned to do when something important needed to be understood before being confronted. Think. Ricardo had been different for weeks. I had noticed it without naming it. More distant in team meetings, with more external meetings than could be explained by the client agenda I knew, with the energy of someone who is processing something they're not sharing. I had attributed it to something personal. I had not thought about what I should have thought. I called 2 additional key accounts discreetly, without saying directly what I was investigating. Under the pretext of a relationship check-in, I did periodically with the most important clients. In the second call, the client told me Ricardo had come by his office the previous week, that they had had a conversation about the future of his account, that Ricardo had mentioned there were changes on the horizon. I asked whether Ricardo had mentioned what kind of changes. The client took a while. He told me Ricardo had said he might be operating more independently in the coming months, that he had told him that could mean more direct attention for his account, that the client had not completely understood what Ricardo was trying to tell him, that he had left with a vague feeling that something was changing. I made the third call. The third client on the list I had mentally built of who would be most vulnerable to that kind of proposal. This client did not answer that day, but when he answered the following day, he told me yes, that Ricardo had made him a proposal, that he had given him time to think, that he had not decided yet, that he was glad I called because he wanted to talk to me before making any decision. I had enough. 3 clients, 3 conversations, a pattern that left no ambiguity about what was happening. What I did not know was the complete extent, whether there were more clients, whether employees were involved, whether it had progressed beyond conversations. I called our corporate attorney. Her name was Adriana. I described what I had. She told me what I described potentially violated the non-competition and non-solicitation clauses we had in our partnership agreement. that we needed to review the agreement in detail before the confrontation, that if the clauses were clear, I had legal options in addition to the direct conversation. We reviewed the agreement that afternoon. The clauses were clear. They explicitly prohibited the solicitation of agency clients during the term of the partnership and for a period of 2 years after dissolution. What Ricardo had done was a direct violation of that agreement. The confrontation with Ricardo I had on Friday at the agency. After most of the team had left, I told him we needed to talk, that it was about the conversations he had had with Don Fernando, with the other 2 clients, and possibly with more. Ricardo looked at me for a moment, not with surprise, with the expression of someone who knows that what they had calculated would not happen has just happened. Then he told me he was sorry, that he had wanted to tell me before, that he had not found the moment. I told him the moment to tell me he wanted to leave the partnership had existed at any point in the 12 years we had been together, that what had not existed was the way to tell me he was leaving while taking clients with him without my knowledge, that those were different things. Ricardo told me he knew what he had done was wrong, that he had been afraid of the direct conversation, that he had preferred to have the necessary resources before telling me anything. I asked him what resources. He told me he had thought that if he had the clients committed, he would have a negotiating position for the dissolution of the partnership, that he had not calculated that that was also the greatest harm he could do me. What followed was a legal and negotiation process that lasted 3 months. I am not going to describe it in its entirety because it has parts that are still sensitive. What I will say is what matters. Ricardo did not take any of the 3 clients. Don Fernando stayed. The second client stayed after a conversation with me. The third also stayed after I clarified the situation with him. Ricardo left the partnership with an agreement that acknowledged the partnership agreement violation and that had economic consequences for him. The non-competition clauses remained in effect for the agreed period. What cost me most of the entire process was not the legal negotiation. It was the 3 months that followed when I reviewed 12 years of partnership backward with the information of what Ricardo had planned. The strategy conversations where I had been completely honest and he had been completely reserved. The decisions we had made together that now had a different layer. The moments when I had believed we were building the same future and he was already building another. That retroactive review is the part that takes the most time and that is least resolved by any formal process. Communications Meridiano exists, with 30 employees, with the clients that stayed, with 2 new partners we hired differently from how it had been with Ricardo, with more explicit agreements, with annual conversations about the state of the partnership that we had not had before. Those conversations are uncomfortable sometimes. They're also what makes what happened with Ricardo less likely to happen again. What I want you to take from this story has parts for people in very different positions. For those who have business partners, conversations about the state of the partnership, about what each partner wants, about whether the future they are building together is still the same for both, are conversations that have to happen explicitly and periodically, not waiting for something to force them. Because when something forces them, there is already harm done. Those conversations are uncomfortable. They are also the difference between a mutually agreed exit and exactly what is described in this story. For those who want to leave a partnership, wanting to leave a partnership is a right. The way you leave matters. The direct conversation about wanting to leave, even when it is difficult, and even if you do not have all the resources ready before having it, almost always produces better results for everyone than the secretly built exit. Because the secret exit is always discovered. And when it is discovered, the options are fewer and the consequences are greater. If this story resonated with you, comment. Do you have explicit periodic conversations about the state of your business partnership and what each partner wants, or do you assume that if something changed, your partner would tell you spontaneously? Like if you believe partnership agreements with clear non-competition and non-solicitation clauses are basic protection every partnership should have regardless of how much partners trust each other. Subscribe for more real stories. Share with someone who has a business partnership and who might benefit from reviewing their partnership agreement before needing it. Practical tip. If you have a business partnership, schedule a formal conversation with your partner at least once a year where both of you explicitly answer the following questions. Are you satisfied with the direction of the partnership? Is there anything about the current dynamic you want to change? Is your vision for the next 3 years for the company the same as when we started? Those questions produce uncomfortable conversations sometimes. They also produce the information that prevents those conversations from happening the way they happened in this story.